I'm here today with the wonderful Esperanza Spalding, who has a new album, one of many great albums, this time with the amazing Milton Nascimento. Hello, Esperanza.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So, the thing that I thought about first talking to you about this album is I was introduced to Milton Nascimento kind of the same way you were. Someone played me Wayne's Native Dancer album, and I just heard a sound that was so unique, so moving. I had to go back and listen to everything he had done at that point. And that was your introduction too. Although, if you could also comment on, you were interested in Brazilian music before Milton. It's just that Milton had an impact on you in a way that maybe no other Brazilian music did at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I first heard probably João Gilberto when I was 15, and I heard Milton when I was 18. So, yeah, in those 3 short years, I had heard other Brazilian music. I had been introduced to Hermeto Pascoal and Egberto Gismonti and Edu Lobo, many people. Um, and 3 years is not a lot of time. And I was interested in a lot of
Mhm.
other things as well. So you can imagine it wasn't a very broad or in depth foray into Brazilian music. And really, I I think about even that signifier of Brazilian music. It's music. I was interested
Yeah.
in music, and here were these people from very different cultures, even though they're within the same like nation of Brazil. The musics of Brazil are incredibly diverse. There's many different and sometimes incommensurate cultures. Um, so yes, in my very limited palette of familiarity with music from that part of the world, there came Milton. And what struck me wasn't the Brazilianness or something. It, like you
Mhm.
said, it was the sound and the spirit and no, the heart that you felt conveyed through his musicianship.
Yeah, and the one thing that when I was first introduced to you on your very first album, was Heads Up, then it became Concord Records. Um, was this? There were some Brazilian tracks on there, and I said, "Oh, so this incredible bass player also loves Brazilian music." And then there was this very original music. I think wasn't there a Milton track on your first record,
Yeah,
if I
well,
remember? Yeah,
it was
yeah.
my second record. Yes, on the self-titled record, I covered Ponta de Areia.
Mhm. And then there was this other side of you that were your original material, which were really innovative and very original. But one of the things I noticed early on in listening to your music, and I remember, I think my editor, David Palizzi, went to visit you at your home, and he came back and he told me, this woman is not just a musician and a bass player. She is an innovator. She has this spirit, this energy. And we're seeing that from so many different projects. Where does that energy come from? Because it seems to me that if someone were to ask me, what's the one thing about Esperanza Spalding that you love, and she has this energy that is almost undefinable. Where does that come from?
um, Gosh, that's a curious question. Um, Gosh, that's curious. I mean, who knows? I don't know, but I think I'm very passionate about and invested in um, honesty. Let's see, authenticity, I guess. Uh, Bringing out what I experience on the inside, things that intrigue me, things that I recognize, things that I hear, things that I'm thinking about, potentials that I see. Um, I'm really passionate about pursuing those, connecting with people who are further along in those than I am, and seeing how we can make a thing together that matches kind of the sensory potential or the potential that I can feel or into it or whatever. Um, yeah, and I think I feel less energized when I'm contorting for the sake of, you know, expectations, social expectations, career expectations, whatever, that the expectation, that fulfilling of the expectations don't directly serve, the bringing out of these inspirations. And then I also just think of like all of our ancestors, I don't mean that in kind of like my great grandparents and my grandparents and, folks who are immediately closely related to me that have passed on, but I just think of like how much life is in each of us. We're connected to the origins of life. Your ancestry goes all the way back to the first life forms in the bottom of the ocean. And I just think that's a lot of data, in our DNA. And I feel the charge of that. I feel a lot of energy and strength from, you know, the countless peoples of my lineages from various parts of the planet. And I kind of feel the participation of that force in the things that I'm doing. Um, so I don't know. That's such a wild question to ask somebody. Where's the energy come from? You know what I mean? Like you could
All
answer
right.
that in a gazillion ways, but I guess I'll just leave it there for now.
Well, and that was a great answer because again with my science background, we're electrical beings. I mean,
Yes.
our cells are polarized. We're electrical. The cell activity takes place because of positive and negative structures,
Yes.
and I sometimes think, and again, I'm being presumptuous here, that one of the things I notice about your music is that level of connectivity. We are human beings. We are electrical.
Hmm.
We are biological. While you don't necessarily describe it as a scientist, you exude it as a musician in your connectivity with greats like Wayne and Herbie, and so many artists that you worked with, and who talk about you in those manners. The quotes, I have a couple from some of your inspirations and collaborators, and like Herbie Hancock. Esperanza's a once in a generation talent. She has the ability to reshape the way we think about jazz and music as a whole. That's a very powerful statement. And yet I've noticed in many interviews that I've seen you do that you almost have a little bit of survivor's guilt. It's like you have set the credits and the laudits that you've received from truly jazz greats. You're almost a little shy about it. It's like don't say that because I it makes me uncomfortable.
Oh no,
But
I'm
at the
grateful. I haven't heard that quote before, and I'm so moved and I'm so grateful. Uh I wouldn't call it survivor's guilt. I I recognize very clearly privileges and advantages that have been working for me that have nothing to do with my work,
Mhm.
have nothing to do with the hours I put in, or even what I hear, what I saw, or what I have to contribute. And I let me be clear, I don't think that labor is what validates somebody's value. It's not because, oh, this
Mhm.
person put in 20 hours and this person only put in 10, so that person who did 20 deserves to have more accolades. It's not about that. It's just the way that the commodification of art works in this system, this economic system, is it relies heavily on the selling of unattainable things like youth and beauty. It relies heavily on this idea that if we present a picture and promotion of a kind of like coveted look, or a coveted aesthetic, even if that's a big butt or, you know, well-rounded breasts or a pretty face or like whatever, if we put that in the front, the novelty of it or the seemingly like, covetability of it or whatever will make people look. And once you have their attention, you can sell something. you know?
Hmm.
And I am a woman that has a body type and a phenotype that is considered like desirable, in the commodified world, in the commercial world. And I recognize deeply that at many points in my career, that has been a selling point, you know? And that's not to diminish my work. I feel I really stand by my work. Even the stuff I'm not proud of or I think was a mistake, I stand by the choice to try that. I stand by where I was in that moment, and I definitely like believe in what I'm saying and what I'm doing musically. I feel very, you know, yeah, sturdy in that. I don't feel ashamed of it, like, oh, it didn't deserve to be out here. I'm glad it's out here. And I have so many friends and so many mentors and heroes and inspirations that have equally needed, valuable, profound things to say and give that don't have the selling advantage of my phenotype or my body type. And
Hmm.
that's what hurts. It's not my fault.
Hmm.
I can't do anything about that right now. Um, I mean, other than continue to uplift what I love, whatever it looks like. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
I think I speak to that because it feels important for like the integrity of the craft to name those forces at work. And I also want the record to be straight that I know what's going on. You know what I mean? Um, and maybe it's also about kind of like demystifying some of what has enabled me to get as far as I have, like for younger people coming after me, that it's like you can choose to play with those selling points if you want to, you can choose to. And I want to be transparent about the way that playing with those elements has helped me, and be really clear that I understand its purpose, like something about for other young women coming up perhaps who are inside of a phenotype that might make people want to glom on to them and promote them and then thereby make a cut of what can be earned. It seems like if I can speak about it, maybe it helps empower us to see more clearly the game that's going on. And I don't mean that in a game like a diss, but to
Hmm.
see more clearly how it works. And then what's at work, and you maybe have more agency in dictating how it's being used. um, and maybe just some grief that I wish more people knew about these mofos that are freaking incredible.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you way back, and I've read articles and seen you in interviews talking about your early experiences with music. But one of the things that struck me more than the music that you were surrounded by at a very young age was the fact that you're an avid reader. And I often wonder when speaking to you and the responses you have to questions like today, that comes from a wealth of understanding about what's important in life, the world, and we get that through reading. And yet we're seeing a new culture sort of coming to be where reading is less important. Video and everything is put in the forefront, and reading books and things like that becomes so much less we're spending less time on that in today's society. How do you think that might affect some of the younger generation of artists that are coming out that didn't have that experience that you had at a very young age, a very impressionable age?
Yeah, I don't feel familiar with the data to really like respond in a meaningful way to that question. I hear you about the concern, like, are less young people proportionally engaging with books. I like that's not what I see from where I sit. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
I engage with like a lot of college students, which is a particular swath of the demographic of young people. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of young people I know are avid readers, are like passionate obsessive readers. And in a way, the social media platforms they use it as a way to find out about who's out there, you know,
Mhm.
like carrying knowledge or putting knowledge together. And I follow like my favorite scholars, like Alexis Pauline Gumbs and
Mhm.
Adrienne Marie Brown and Bayo Kamalafe, and these ones that, like, because of the platform of social media, because of their colleagues, the adjacent colleagues that I or other young people follow, we come to learn about these other great thinkers, of our time. So I think I'd just be curious about, like, what percentage of the population was reading deeply.
Mhm.
you know like, I get the sense that it's never been a big swath of the population, like, and like reading a trashy love novel is different than reading James Baldwin. you know
Mhm.
um so I just don't know enough to really know, but I think ultimately what's important is living deeply and being curious and finding out about what other life forms have discovered, are feeling, are experiencing, like other truths, other realities. And in a lot of ways, social media does open up a lot of new windows for people around
Mhm.
the world to find out about the story or the experience of somebody who doesn't have a book deal and never will. you know
Mhm.
Maybe their command of the English language or whatever is the dominant language in their country, like, isn't great, but they have really important things to share. And I I I also see that happening, and I
Mhm.
see that ability to, wow, like, learn about so many people's experience probably opens up the potential to want to find out more in a way that, if I can only learn about that person from a book, like, where would I encounter the book? What if I don't identify? Maybe I'm dyslexic, or I went to a school that didn't help me learn how to read well. So I don't know. Those are all factors that I think come into play with your question, and I am now curious about the data of, like, young
Yeah.
readership. And in it, like I said, I know my perspective is skewed because I tend to, because of my invitations to teach at universities and teaching at universities, I'm kind of exposed to this demographic of young people who are scholars, who are avid
Mhm.
readers, and so are all their friends. So it looks a certain way, from where I sit. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because there may be a segue into the way people are introduced to music today. So, um, I'm considerably older than you, and but I know that in your younger years, it wasn't as easy to access music. You had to go out and buy an album or borrow it, or and
Mhm.
if you wanted to check out, a Wayne Shorter album, you'd typically have to borrow it for a friend, go to the record store. It wasn't heard on the radio. It wasn't that accessible.
Mhm.
Very few radio stations played that music. But today you have access to it. And I think what you're saying in social media is that, well, people may not be reading books, but they may learned about something through a
Mhm.
TikTok that it opened their eyes to something else.
Mhm.
And there was a quote you quoted Duke Ellington, which is a quote that I always liked, where he said only about 5% of the population will ever truly be interested in creative music.
Yeah.
And your music is certainly creative, to say the least. Do you think that creative music can ever be popular, or is that are they creativity and popularity mutually exclusive? I don't think so, but I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah. Just for the sake of tracking citations, I heard that quote from Terry. Terry's the person who
Oh,
introduced me to that quote. Terry Ellen Carrington, another great person I've been able to work with. Um,
wonderful.
yeah, that's so curious. I mean, when I hear Frank Ocean and hear the Beyonce's Renaissance and hear some of the things that Sia does and Kendrick Lamar, like these very popular in the mainstream artists, to me, there's so much expansive creativity in the sound, Um, yeah, and I think of, Motown records, Stevie Wonder, Minnie Riperton, like, whoa, they were very popular artists, and that music was very daring. Um,
Mhm.
so it makes me think about maybe it's 5% of the population that's interested in the front edge, like what is the avant-garde or what is the vanguard? Um, maybe just because it's less familiar. It takes a while for our ears to like catch up to things. And and then I think, things that felt peripheral or like at the forefront or the vanguard will make their way into this, the sounds of popular music. um it's like what happens in film. You'll have
Mhm.
these like highly famous popular filmmakers who were obsessed with these avant-garde in the cut directors, and then they bring some of those tools or approaches into what they make, and like a more, and now that becomes part of our visual palette of what we
Mhm.
understand looking at film. And it feels unfortunate because that phenomenon, I think, what I'm kind of witnessing as a potential phenomenon of like how music at the creative outskirts makes its way into the center. Part of the reason like it feels a little painful is because the implication is those music practitioners who are at the outskirts get overlooked,
Mhm.
and don't get to participate in the economic potential of what they're creating. And that feels like it's been going on for 100 years plus, in American music and maybe other musics around the world. Um, and I know like the unaddressed elephant in the room when we're talking about these shifts in the way we consume music, I think is the shift in the revenue streams.
Mhm.
The sense the sense of like, oh gosh, fewer and fewer people can make a living making this music. And I also wonder about that proportionally. I feel I just need more data, because
Mhm.
I also remember, like, yeah, in the, let's say, 70s or 80s, that somebody was making a lot of music, was making a lot of money off of a particular swath of successful musicians. And also the majority of music lovers who were out here making music didn't get a cut. So it's hard to know.
Mhm.
I think maybe the like dominant music industry has always been exploitive and abusive to
Mhm.
musicians, and actually maybe because there are more musicians able to participate, our screams and hollers about how unjust it is are being heard. But
Mhm.
I don't know that it's any more somehow inherently, extractive as it's always been, um and I deeply and desperately pray and work for that shit to change, because that we know this, the ways as evidenced by how much music people consume. Music is so precious and integral to our well-being on a daily basis. And you'd hope that something that precious and integral, we could figure out an economic system where the practitioners of it could make a living wage.
Sure.
That
Yeah, and
applies
the
that applies to farm workers too. We're like, I also
sure.
want to say we're not special. Like, I don't want us to be exceptional. There's a
Mhm.
lot of fields like that: nursing, childcare, elder care, doulas, hospice workers, farm workers. There are so many janitorial workers. Like, there's many, like the essentials that we need all day, every day, where people are tirelessly pouring out their care for their world and their community, and barely scraping it together. So it's really a larger conversation, but it's as a
Sure.
and I also have to sit on the side a lot of the time because I'm doing well. So I can perceive and I can witness what's at play and what's at work, and also recognize I've like eked through this like little channel, and I'm doing well. And I was just listening to a beautiful talk by Orland Bishop, where he was talking about longing for social structures that allow us to not get too far away from our counterparts suffering, you know? So it's also like I want to make sure I'm close with all of my colleagues so that I can remain in tune with and in solidarity and struggle and fight with what needs to change for all of our well-being in this industry.
Wow. And there's a there's quite a bit of, what I'm hearing is quite a bit of spirituality in your description of that, and some of that comes with you seem to have an uncanny passion for uh, uh, elder people, and when I mean that in a positive way, in that the I watched the EPK with you and Milton, and sort of the love that you can see in that video that you have for Milton. I saw it in the Wayne Shorter documentary. Very, very moving. In fact, when it got to the end of Wayne's documentary, and I interviewed Terrence about that, and when your performance live, you can feel the love. There is a connectivity between Wayne, you, Herbie, Milton, and there's this respect. And I guess if I had to put one word to it, there's a spirituality. There's this thing that's bigger than we can actually understand, that you might be expressing it in your music. That, like I said before, with biology, even though you may not be a scientist per se, we can hear it. We can hear it in your music, and that's something that I find so special. And is that something that you think about as far as spirituality? And do you consider yourself a spiritual person, for whatever people's definition is of spirituality?
I love that. This is fun. Um, Gosh, I mean, I've never met a non-spiritual person or being or like entity. I'm looking at this pile of sweet potatoes. I'm like, those are spiritual beings too, you know? Uh, I sense, believe, have been taught about um, an aliveness that courses through everything, you know. And when you speak about Herbie and Wayne, they introduced me to this paradigm within Buddhism that's commonly referred to as Nichiren Buddhism, which feels important just to track the lineages of the bearers of it. And it's less about the name of the person who conveyed it and more about the essence of the teaching, which I'm not going to try to recap now, but I'll say the more I study it, and many other things, many other teachers and mentors in my life have gifted me with these lenses of seeing and experiencing or perceiving um, life, aliveness. I really do. I do recognize. I do believe in this um, inclusive mutuality. You know, there's absolutely all inclusive mutuality between all life, all phenomena, all existence. And it's really fine and dandy to say that right now, and then I'll forget it in 20 minutes when I, get in my car to go to an errand. And I feel when we are really present with playing music with others, even playing music but on our own, it feels like you're kind of, maybe your body is vibrating in a way that you can kind of experience or feel through some of those fundamental uh truths, you know. I don't mean truths like spoken truths, just like a phenomenal truth, like beyond our consciousness even to perceive it, like some phenomenal truths about our laws, you could say, or whatever, like physical laws, natural laws that are there, just they'ring. And it does feel like dipping into the music space it kind of feels like you're in company with those um nesses, reality phenomena, and I feel those radiating through everyone's musicking. Even if it's not very quote unquote good, there's a reason somebody wants to make music. There's the reason somebody puts their hands on a guitar and like keeps doing that. And I never have believed that it's just about popularity or egoism. That might be like a trick that there's soul played on them to get them to put their hands on the instrument. I just
It's
think
like a
there's
side
something,
effect.
yeah, there's something so, I almost want to use the word holy, but it has so many funky connotations and beautiful connotations. But all I can think of is that what you're speaking to, what is this thing that's like radiating between us? Um, Love is definitely one of the phenomena
Mhm.
present. And I think when we get into music with anybody at any time, you're like, woo, getting into a state. You're getting into a relationship with a very vast, profound phenomena, and that's like undeniable. When it radiates
Yeah.
forward and you feel it as a listener, and that's just so cool. It's such a joyous part of being alive with the with minds, to even explore these thoughts, It's really fun. It's like infinite entertainment, infinite exploration.
And to take it finally to music therapy. I mean, the one thing that I find fascinating is I could be in a bad mood and something musical will come on and completely like that change my
Mhm.
mood.
Mhm.
Sometimes brings you back to a time where maybe when I originally heard that song,
Mhm.
or kind of the stereotype when you watch someone or a couple or an audience at an opera and they're crying. Something's moving them. It's
Yes.
therapeutic in so many ways. And what I love about what you do, Esperanza, is that you don't. It's not in. It's not in jazz. Of course, there's jazz there a lot. It's in so many different genres where it's therapeutic. It is emotional. It is. It takes you somewhere.
Oh, I appreciate
And
this.
for that, oh, of course, and we appreciate you. And
Thank you.
I just all I can say is, please continue to give us more of that. We're hungry for that. I think we need that.
Oh, gratitude. And we need to make it too. I mean the big we. Like, it is a birthright of being a human to make music. And with all of the socializing we've been exposed to around who should do music or who we want to hear do music, it's most of us get trained out of the idea that it's something that I deserve to do that's valuable if I do it. Even if nobody pays me for it, or I don't get a platform, I'm so I feel like such an evangelist for this reminding people, like, do music, sing for yourself, sing if you have the blues, sing if you are excited, if you are stuck on a problem for your thesis, like whatever, just like utilizing this gift of this life of the ability to make music. You tap out at a weird, not cool rhythm on the countertop, like it doesn't matter. There's such profound potential, beneficial potential in humans musicking, and I just like, yes, that's what I dedicate my life to, and I can do it in a particular way, and it's cool, and da 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 da. And also, like, I encourage everyone to 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 explore their own musicality. Yeah.
Well, we are very grateful for that. And again, it's so good to see you,
Thank
Esperanza.
you.
And I hope to see you again soon,
Yes.
maybe with your next album. And
Yes.
until then,
All right. Thank you so much.
all right.